all these fucking ecstasy pills. And I had like 30 different kinds of ecstasy when I got busted. 30. In today's story, I'm going to just kind of outline my whole entire weed career, basically, right? So I started like actually smoking weed started smoking weed, then I quit smoking weed, then I started smoking weed again. And I think that first time I started smoking weed, I think I was around like 16. So then it wasn't too long after I started smoking weed that I started selling weed, right? And that was at 17 years old. So, and I started selling weed basically just to try to have free weed to smoke. I mean, and that's, you know, probably the most common with any drug. You know, people are just, you know, they have a drug, they like the drug, and, you know, they would prefer not. Now, when things are legal, it's like a whole different story. Like, I wanted to drink when I was 16 too, but I never bought, like, I did buy to sell alcohol once in my life. I told that story about the Oregon Country Fair. Okay, that's not like something you normally do. It's not like, God, I want to get a beer, so I'm going to go buy a 6-pack and I'll sell 5 of those beers to make a beer. No, it doesn't really work that way. So that's why everything should be legal. It's pretty simple. I had a bunch of bad experiences buying weed, right? So people people would steal and fucking, you know, sell ya fucking shit that was like fucking not even weed. Like they would like take a phone book apart, get it wet and scrunch it up and color it. I mean, just all kinds of, bullshit, right? Fucking oregano or whatever, you know. I made a conscious decision, which, you know, I made a lot of conscious decisions about what my life was going to be like going forwards at a young age. Like, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to behave in this particular way. And I decided I was going to be a honest weed salesman, okay? Regardless of the fact that weed was a illegal, horrible fucking thing, I knew that was bullshit. So I was gonna go about it, and I knew I didn't want to be a piece of shit, you know? And, you know, so I just was as honest as I could. Now, people would always want to buy an 1/8, right? Well, I probably sold hardly any actual 1/8s in my entire fucking life. I sold 10ths, okay? So, and I would make the clarification on occasions, but I mean, generally it was a 40 sack, you know? And that's what it progressed to. But in the early days, I was like selling, you know, an unknown quantity because I didn't have a scale. I had bought an amount for an amount of money, and I got baggies, and I broke it down into equal amounts and kept one of those amounts and then sold off the rest. And the way that I would sell off that weed is Portland had a light rail train, and that light rail train called the MAX, the Metropolitan Area Express, that went in. And before that went in, I used to be able to get on a bus in Selwood, Oregon, in the houseboats where I grew up, and end up at my grandparents' house in Gateway, Oregon, all on one bus ride, just randomly. But the buses used to do really crazy long stuff before the MAX go in. When the MAX goes in, the whole thing changes. So anyway, I would get on this MAX and just ride it. And and freaking see people that look like they were weed people and hit them up, right? And I had a pager, so I was able to give people my number. And I was on public transit all the time, so people would page me, and I would go to a payphone, call them, tell them what stops to meet me at or whatever. I had that going on there for a little while. Now, I then started like working jobs that had me working like super long shifts and all that stuff. So, and I had some bad situations that just like getting ripped off. Like I went down to this place, High Rocks, and I just got paid like a big check for me. It was like $300. An ounce of weed was about that. It was about $300. And so I went down to High Rocks, and I was down there, and I met this fucking piece of shit, and he fucking stole my money. Basically what he did was got in the car and drove to the place, and the place was just bullshit, and he had to take the money to go. So I gave him the money, and he just went in the backyard of a house and just split and left. So he left me in the car with this dude that didn't know what the fuck was going on. I mean, he just like talked this dude in to give us a ride. Hey man, this guy he'll get you stoned. Will you get him stoned? Yeah, he'll get you stoned. You know, so just fucking horrible people. Anyway, so I wasn't, you know, I wasn't like super consistent, you know. In the early days, it was pretty all right, but then, you know, and I had some customers that lasted just a long time, you know. So I'd smoke weed, and I'd get weed, and I'd be like, hey, you want some weed, you know, and I'd whatever on the deal. So, and that just kind of kept up. As the years went on, so I'm 17, I'm 18, I'm 19. Now at 19, I hook up with this dude that's growing weed, right? And so I start growing weed also, right? So, and I'm growing weed with a girlfriend, and at the same time, I'm also like slinging weed, buying weed. Now, as far as other drugs are concerned and selling, like, I've done almost every damn drug, and some that you probably never even fucking heard of. I've never been a junkie or an addict or anything like that. I was always just a drug partier, and just always farther and farther and farther in between the times I do that shit. And I got no plans of ever doing anything again. But I never had I can't say I never had a plan, but anyway, point being is not my thing really anymore, but you never know what happens. It's a crazy fucking world. So I never write off anything. I seriously don't ever want to do hallucinogens again, because, whew, that shit's just, the last few of those trips were just rough AF, right? So I've sold hallucinogenics, acid, and mushrooms. I even tried growing mushrooms. I never bought coke or heroin or meth. One time, now that I remember it, this fucking dude was like, here's an ounce of meth, you know, go sell it, right? And like somebody else like told me to, or maybe even him or something, told me to put a bunch of bullshit in it. So I did that, and then the people were like, fuck me, whatever, you know, so, and it's like, that shit, that was always seriously like, blacked out drunk, somebody, here, do some meth, you know, and it's like, so I didn't really like that crowd much at all. Coke, like, as far as like selling coke, I mean, I can remember even being given coke, somebody, hey, go sell this for me. Me taking it to somebody, and the person not even wanting it. I mean, and that's like the fucking memory that pops up. So, I mean, it just, being a weed dealer for freaking 10 years, and somebody that partied on drugs, like, yeah, I had occasions to have everything. Reselling was really not my thing except for weed. Like when I got busted with the most amazing coke. I called it Space Coke, based on that fucking movie. I can't remember what the movie is. Space Coke with Pee Wee Herman. Space Coke. That must have been a Cheech and Chong movie. So anyway, I was like, God, this is the best Coke I've ever had. Anytime I ever do Coke ever again, I want it to be this. So I bought some and then, had it sitting around because it wasn't like I was fucking doing Coke all the time. I'd do Coke, once a month or some shit, right? I got busted with that. Ecstasy. Now, ecstasy was like baseball cards to some people, right? Like, there was so many different pills and shapes and stamps on the pills and colors and all this shit, and it was like a savings fucking thing, right? Now, all these fucking ecstasy pills, and I had like 30 different kinds of ecstasy when I got busted. 30, and I got lab reports on every single one, and all of them had a different fucking story. People would say, oh, this one's got meth in it, and this one's got ketamine in it, and this one's got heroin in it, or this one's this and that, and everybody had a different story for all this shit. It was all bullshit. The only thing that was in any of this shit was either MDA or MDMA or both. So it was just amazing to see all that. Anyway, around 19, I was selling weed and growing weed, and that lasted to like about 21, and shit just crumbled at 21, and then I got back into selling heavy again with this new connect, but it was this really shitty weed out of fucking Mexico. And then I got into this whole banking thing that just kind of fucked up all the weed selling. But it was actually kind of nice to not be having, a crime, pullover crime, constantly. Then at 24, 23, I started blowing glass, and that was pretty much like when I started blowing glass, then it was like, fuck, I'm blowing weed pipes, Of course I got weed, and it was just hand in hand, right? So, and I was in with the crew that was opening up head shops, glass shops, and fucking, it was the Wild West back then, man, because it was like we had fucking passed medical marijuana, but it was like, now what? It was like there wasn't much happening, and the feds were like, oh fuck no, you aren't doing none of that shit, and they were just on our asses. That's why I stopped growing, because it was fucking insane. The feds got like 180 grow houses out of Portland in fucking 6 months. It was insane. And you look back at the fucking the first ever indoor marijuana growing bust was in 1962 in Oregon. So our roots are deep. Our strains are fucking golden. The things that were done indoors in Oregon rival what was going on outdoors in California in Humboldt. Okay? And there was a lot of shit going on, people going back and forth to Amsterdam. Seeds weren't very hard to sneak back and forth. People were putting everything in their butt. They wanted to go on a cruise and get stoned, they take fucking weed in their butt. Like, oh, fuck. That's why I never traveled. Exit only. The connections and everything, as I got older, better about my shit, I was just stacking money. I wasn't having so many problems. And then things really started to kick up about 25. So when I was about 25, they were rocking. 25, 26, 27. And by the time I got busted in late 27, I was about 6 months away from retiring. I had freaking millions of dollars in cash and assets. I literally was already planning my exit strategy. So that was the 10-year plan that I was like, you know, I don't know, for about a year and a half was like real, it was real, like I can really be done with enough money to be happy. But, you know, it's always hard to take that money and then make it into legitimate money. And that was why I was doing shit like buying choppers and Land Rovers and opening nightclubs and all this other shit. It was all just to try to have some legitimate money. Although that nightclub wasn't very legitimate. But, yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's just been an overview of my career. Just short and dirty. If you'd like to hear more specific tales, I am telling every single story I can tell from my entire life. This is my autobiography. There's a few other things going on in this channel. Like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Have a good day.